Hey everyone, it's Richard Metal Fan here, bringing you guys a brand new 2020 album review. And today we're going to be looking into the new album from the band In Heart's Wake, entitled Kaliyuga, which was released today through UNFD and Rise Records. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with In Heart's Wake, they're a metalcore band based out of Byron Bay in Australia, and these guys have been around since 2006. And In Heart's Wake are one of my favorite bands. I've been listening to them since probably around for 5 years now. I just randomly saw them on a YouTube suggestion. I went and checked them out, and I really dug what I heard, and I got all their albums. And I remember where they put out like 2 other EPs called Into the Storm and The Gateway, which all came out in like '07, and those are hard to find. I mean, I know I see on Discogs they go for like around fucking $200, and I'm not paying that much, but yeah, but they've just been playing locally all around Australia and stuff, but it wasn't until probably around 2012 or so where they actually got signed to a big label deal. And in 2012 they put out their debut full-length album called Divination, which in my opinion is a really good album, probably in my opinion my favorite album from In Heart's Wake. And I don't know, it's just a really catchy album, but it wasn't, lyrically I feel like each songs from that album talk about like the tarot card. And then we go into 2014 with their second album being Earthwalker, which kind of deals with the topic of the element of Earth. And then a year later they put out their third album, Skydancer, which came out in 2015, which I thought was pretty great. And I heard that those 2 albums are actually recorded on the same time, so which is pretty nuts. They released one album a year before and a year later. And then their previous album, Arc, came out, which I thought was a pretty solid album. It was actually kind of different considering their other thing I should also forgot to mention was their first 3 albums had like guest appearances from like Winston from Parkway Drive to freaking the 2 vocalists from the name Hacktivist. Yeah, and I don't think there was any guest appearances on their last album, Arc, but this album had some guest appearances as well. And also like Earthwalker had to deal with the element of Earth, and then Skydancer, air, and Arc with water. And now their 5th album, the Kaliyuga, which I think, does this album live up or exceed what Arc has? In my opinion, I feel like it definitely has. It's kind of different compared to what we have heard so far from the In Heart's Wake. Like just musically, vocally, and everything's a little bit different. And I love how now they just deal with the element of fire, which I remember when I last saw them at 2018 Warped Tour. I was talking to Jake Taylor, and I asked him about it, and he said it wouldn't happen, and well, here we are, so careful what you say. But yeah, just one thing to know about is just the vocal work in general is just tight. Like Jake Taylor's vocals, like just like his harsh vocals, just sound more just powerful and just crisp and heavier. And definitely how he does like more like lower kind of like gutturals, which I haven't heard so hard so far pretty much in any In Heart's Wake album. And then the clean vocals from Kyle Arish, their bass player. His clean vocals really just shine in a little bit. He definitely has that range to it. The guitar work on this album is pretty tight. Ben Yarn and Evan Dahl's guitar playing is just tight. Just like really great riffs that they come up with. The bass playing, I kind of wish like Kyle's bass was heard a little bit more. And drumming wise, Connor Ward's drumming is a pretty great. He pretty much keeps the beat with this album. And so let's just dive into this album track by track. Now, starting things off is the full opener called Crisis. When you first hear this whole opening track, you'll probably think if you got the wrong CD or something, but this has some like breakbeat drums combined with sort of like kind of like funk style guitars that were kind of like different from what we've heard so far from In Heart's Wake. And the music is kind of like melded with like parts of like Greta Thunberg's address, sort of like about like the global climate, with like her saying like how dare you and stuff. And it just merges into what we could heard as like a metal kind of like mixed with like EDM, which is just so weird. But then it leads into the next song being Worldwide Suicide, which is actually the first single released from this album. And I feel like this pretty much showcases like the new direction of the band has gone in. And Jake's growling on here is just fucking amazing. He sounds a lot deeper here, like I've already mentioned before. Yeah, I think it's a pretty good choice of a first single from this album. And then we move on to the next song on the album being Hellbringer, which is, believe it or not, they did like an April Fool's joke about this would have been what the album was called, but it turns out it's actually one of the songs. And this song has a guest appearance featuring Jamie Hills from the band Polaris, which starts off with a little bit of a build-up with a spoken word, some like weird Christian wacko, and then Jake sort of like screams Hellbringer, and just the whole band kicks in at full force, and just some really catchy riffs. And I sort of like the vocals from Jake and Kyle. Well, it just they pretty much deliver great. And then moving on to, well, it's funny enough I say moving on to, is the next song being Moving On, which is just a very short song which builds into just a fiery frenzy, which just pretty much just capture you and just get you moving. And I love sort of like the mixed like vocal interplay from clean and harsh vocals just work real great, right? Especially from like the verse and chorus. It's just amazing. And then we go on to Time Bomb. Well, now this song kind of has a little bit of like a new metal vibe to it, and the chorus kind of reminds me of something from like Linkin Park and some shit like that, or at least that's pretty much what I got from it. It's a good song though, and I sort of like loving like the verses have kind of like whispering a little bit, which then builds up into like a great chorus and then a really strong breakdown, which will get you moving. Then we move on to Son of a Witch, which when I first heard this song, it feels like I get a little bit of a hip hop vibe of it with this track. And Jake kind of like does like a little bit of rap style with his vocals, and while Kyle sort of like displays his great range on the clean vocal department. And also from musically, this kind of reminds me of something from Skydancer. Moving on to Crossroads, which is a pretty weird song when you first hear it, and you pretty much wonder if this is even In Heart's Wake. And this features a guest appearance from Georgia Floyd, which sounds good. And musically, this kind of reminds you a little bit of Evanescence. I mean, it has a nice guitar riff, which leads into a great chorus. Moving on to the next song on the album, which is called Husk, which is a decent song at best. It has a nice beat to it and a great chorus that'll just get your foot tapping. And there's some like nice vocal passages and harmonies too I could just listen to. Just wow. Just for days. And then we go on to Naiga, I can never pronounce it, which is just a little interlude, which is just some weird music and shit. It's just nothing really special. It's just like an intro into the next track, which is Force of Life, which is a good song with some really great drumming from Connor. And I love sort of like the mix of harsh and clean vocals just come really hard here, and you just can't lose yourself too. Yeah. Moving on to the next song on the album, which is called Iron Dice, which features a guest appearance from Randy Raymond of the sort of like an Australian hardcore band called Mass Appeal. It's a strong song with a really nice heavy verse that just seamlessly lead into like the clean, so the other clean verse was just backed by just a great riff. And it has sort of like has a little bit of like creepy like effects used in like the verses here, and it pretty much works well with the guitars. Then we move on to the next song on the album, which is called Dystopia, which in my opinion is the heaviest track on here. And it has like the riffs, and the guitar tone sounds sick as fuck, and the verses just go clean, and just Kyle just really shows off here. It's a very mid-paced song. And then the album closes with 2033, which has a distorted guitar, chugs away into like the intro before jumping into a nice, just haunting start. And just love how the clean vocals and just some really great guitars then switch to a heavier side with sort of like the harsher vocals and crunching instruments just goes in. And it's a pretty good way to end this album. Now overall, Kaliyuga by In Heart's Wake is a can't even speak today. Kaliyuga by In Heart's Wake is a pretty good album, if I do say so myself. So if I were to give this album a score, I would probably give this a solid 8 out of 10. So yeah, that's my review of the new In Heart's Wake album, guys. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about the album, and I'll see you all in the next video. And as always, keep it metal.